It was -8 degrees in Chicago. But inside my parents' garage, the air felt hot enough to burn my skin off. The cherry red paint of the Mercedes SUV gleamed under the fluorescent lights. An $85,000 beast with a bow the size of a beach ball plastered on the hood. My sister, Summer, was screaming. Not crying. Screaming. A high-pitched, theatrical shriek of pure delight that echoed off the concrete walls. She threw herself onto the hood, posing for a selfie before she even touched the door handle. "It's perfect," she yelled, her voice cracking. "It's literally perfect." My mother, Susan, stood by the driver's side door, wiping a tear from her eye, beaming like she'd just donated a kidney. My father, Thomas, had his arm around her, looking proud, looking like a man who hadn't just spent the last 4 years crying poverty to his eldest daughter. I stood in the doorway, clutching a small, flat package wrapped in tissue paper. "Open yours, Josie," my mother said, not looking away from Summer. "We didn't forget you." I looked down. The tissue paper was wrinkled. I tore it open. Inside was a scarf. Synthetic. Scratchy. The kind that sparks when you touch it. And there, right on the corner, was a neon orange sticker. "Clearance. $3.99. Be humble," my mother said, finally glancing at me with a tight, patronizing smile. "Summer needs the image for her career. You know how it is. You're built to carry the load. Josie, you don't need things like this." Drop a comment below and tell me, what is the most insulting gift you've ever received from someone who claims to love you? I want to know I am not the only one. I didn't say anything. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the scarf on the ground. I just looked at the sticker. $3.99. That was the price of my value in this family. I turned around, walked out of the garage, got into my 7-year-old sedan, and drove away. The snow was coming down harder now, blurring the windshield, turning the suburban streets into a white tunnel. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles were white. I wasn't driving home. I was driving away from the lie I had been living for 4 years. Inside the car, the silence was deafening. My brain started doing the math. Unbidden. Unwanted. $3,500. That was the amount I transferred to my father's account on the 1st of every month. $42,000 a year. $168,000 over the last 4 years. That money was supposed to be for business loans. It was supposed to be saving the family hardware franchise from being crushed by the big box stores. It was supposed to be my contribution to the legacy. I lived in a studio apartment above a bakery that smelled like burnt yeast. I slept on a mattress I bought used. I taped plastic over my windows in the winter because I couldn't afford to fix the drafts. I ate rice and beans for lunch, dinner, and sometimes breakfast. I skipped the dentist for 3 years because a root canal cost the same as half a month of family support. And they bought her a Mercedes, an $85,000 car for a 25-year-old influencer with 1,200 followers and no job. I thought back to being 7 years old. We were at a family picnic. Summer had scraped her knee, a tiny, barely visible scratch. My mother had scooped her up, cooing, rushing her to the car for ice cream to make it better. I had fallen out of a tree 10 minutes later and broken my wrist. I walked to my father, holding my arm, face pale. He looked at me, sighed, and said, "Don't make a scene. Josie, you're tough. Walk it off." I walked it off all the way to the emergency room 3 hours later. That was the dynamic. That was the rule. I was the glass child. Have you heard of that term? It is when one sibling takes up so much space, so much emotional energy, that the other one becomes transparent. You aren't abused. Exactly. You are just looked through. Because I was competent. Because I didn't cry. Because I got good grades and kept my room clean. They assumed I didn't need anything. My sturdy nature became my prison. They didn't see my strength. They saw a utility. I wasn't a daughter. I was a load-bearing wall. And you don't thank a wall for standing up. You just hang heavy things on it until it cracks. Summer was fragile, so she got the care. I was glass hard, sharp, and invisible. Until today. Today. The glass didn't just crack. It shattered. And they were all standing barefoot in the shards. The snow was blinding now. But my mind was crystal clear. I remembered the day it started. 4 years ago. My father sat me down at the kitchen table. His face gray. His hands trembling. "The store is under," he said. "The suppliers are cutting us off. If we don't pay the bridge loan, we lose the franchise. We lose the house. We lose everything." He cried. My father never cried. It terrified me. "I just need a bridge. Josie. Just until the holiday rush. Maybe 6 months." I had just been promoted to senior logistics manager. I was making good money for the first time in my life. I felt a surge of pride. Finally, I could be the hero. I could be the one they needed. "I can help," I said. "I can send $3,500 a month. That covers the loan payment." "Right." He grabbed my hand. "You're saving us. Joe, you're saving the family." 6 months turned into a year. Then 2. Then 3. Every time I tried to bring it up, the guilt trip was immediate. "Business is slow." My mother would whisper, "Your father is so stressed. His heart can't take it. Do you want to be the reason he has a stroke?" So I kept paying. I kept eating rice. I kept wearing shoes with holes in the soles. And I kept telling myself it was worth it, because I was a good daughter. I was the responsible one. But it wasn't just duty. It was a trap. A psychological trap called the sunk cost fallacy. You know what that is. It is when you keep investing in a losing proposition, not because you think it will succeed, but because you cannot bear to admit that the investment you've already made is gone. Every check I wrote wasn't about the future. It was about validating the past. If I stopped paying in year 2, then the $40,000 I sent in year 1 was wasted. My brain tricked me. "Just 1 more month," it whispered. "If you stop now, you lose everything. If you keep going, maybe they will finally be safe. Maybe they will finally love you." It wasn't stupidity. It was hope weaponized against me. I was buying shares in a company that didn't exist. I was investing in a love that was a Ponzi scheme. I remembered visiting them 6 months ago. Summer was complaining that her modeling portfolio needed an update. A $2,000 update. My mother looked at me. "Josie, maybe you could..." I cut her off. "I can't. Mom, I'm tapped out." My mother sighed. A long, disappointed exhale. "Well, we'll figure it out. We always do." I noticed then that she was holding a new designer handbag. A Louis Vuitton. I asked her about it. "Oh, this," she said, stroking the leather. "It's a knockoff. A good one." Right. I believed her. Because the alternative that she was spending $3,000 on a bag while I paid her mortgage was too painful to consider. I believed her because I had to. Because if I didn't, I would have to admit that I was being used. And admitting that hurts more than being broke. But the scarf, the $3.99 sticker, that was the glitch in the matrix. That was the moment the sunk cost fallacy broke. Because you can rationalize a lot of things, but you cannot rationalize a clearance sticker on Christmas morning while a Mercedes sits in the driveway. I pulled my car over to the side of the road. My hands were shaking. I wasn't crying. I was furious. Cold. Clinical. Absolute fury. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the disrespect. It was about the fact that they thought I was stupid. They thought I was a resource. A natural resource like water or coal. Something to be extracted until it ran dry. I took a deep breath. The air in the car was freezing. I reached into my glove box and pulled out a file folder. I had brought it with me just in case. Just in case my gut feeling was wrong. Just in case they really were grateful. But they weren't. I opened the folder. Inside were the papers I had printed out 3 days ago. The audit. I work in logistics. My entire job is tracking things. Finding inefficiencies. Spotting theft. 3 days ago, I decided to audit my parents. I called a contact I had at their bank. We went to college together. "Hey," I said, "I'm trying to help my parents with a loan application. But their records are a mess. Can you just check the status of the business account ending in 459? I want to make sure there are no liens." He tapped on his keyboard. "Josie," he said, his voice changing. "There are no liens. The account is healthy. In fact, It's sitting at a steady balance. They're breaking even. They haven't missed a franchise fee in 5 years. What about the debt service, I asked. The $3,500 a month? There's no debt service on that account. He said, but I see a recurring incoming transfer of $3,500. It comes in, and then it auto-transfers out the same day to a savings account. A savings account. Yeah. Labeled Summer Trust. The world stopped spinning. They weren't paying business loans. They weren't fighting off bankruptcy. They were taking my money, my life, my sweat, and funneling it directly into a savings account for my sister. They were hoarding my survival to fund her luxury. I thanked him and hung up. I sat in my cubicle for an hour, staring at a spreadsheet. I didn't scream. I didn't call them. I went to work. I tracked the payments. Every single one. 4 years. 48 months. $168,000. Plus the emergency cash for dental work that probably went to Botox. Plus the car repairs for a car that was perfectly fine. I realized then that the hardware store wasn't the business. I was the business. I was the family startup. And they were the venture capitalists draining the equity. I didn't call them. I didn't scream. I didn't drive over to their house and demand my money back. That is what a victim does. They react. They beg for an explanation. They look for an apology that isn't coming. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a logistics manager. And I had just identified a critical failure in the supply chain. You don't argue with a broken system, you replace it. Instead of going home to cry, I made an appointment. Not with a therapist, but with a real estate attorney named Marcus. He was the kind of guy who charged $400 an hour and didn't offer you coffee because time was money. I sat in his office, surrounded by mahogany and silence, and laid out the spreadsheet. I want to know about the lien on this property, I said, sliding a piece of paper across his desk. It was my parents' address. Marcus tapped on his keyboard for a few minutes, his face impassive. Then he stopped. This property is in pre-foreclosure, he said. The mortgage hasn't been paid in 6 months. He blinked. 6 months. But I send them money every month. Specifically for this? Well, Marcus said, turning his screen toward me. They aren't paying it. The bank has initiated proceedings. They're underwater. But here's the interesting part. The bank is looking to offload this distressed note. They want it off their books before the fiscal year ends. They're selling the debt. I stared at the screen. My parents weren't just stealing my money to fund Summer's lifestyle. They were gambling with their own shelter. Assuming I would bail them out when the hammer finally dropped. They were playing chicken with a bulldozer because they thought I was the safety net. How much, I asked. To buy the note. To become the lien holder. Marcus raised an eyebrow. It's steep. You'd have to pay a lump sum. Effectively. You'd be buying the mortgage from the bank. You become the bank. I looked at my savings account balance on my phone. I had been saving for 5 years. Every bonus. Every tax refund. Every penny I pinched by eating ramen and freezing in the winter. I had enough for a down payment on my own house. A nice house. A house where I wouldn't be cold. I'll take it, I said. Marcus paused. Miss, if you do this, you aren't paying off their house. You're buying the debt. You become their creditor. If they don't pay you, you have the right to foreclose. You have the right to evict. I know, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Calm. Hollow. Draw up the papers. I want it executed immediately. And I want the foreclosure notice prepared for service on December 25th. Christmas, Marcus asked. It's the only day I know they'll all be home. I lied. It wasn't about convenience. It was about symmetry. I signed the papers. I wired the money. My entire life savings. Gone in a single click. I wasn't buying a house for myself anymore. I was buying leverage. I walked out of that office with a manila envelope tucked into my bag. It wasn't heavy, but it felt like I was carrying a loaded gun. Fast forward to Christmas Eve. The night before the garage reveal, I drove up the winding driveway to my parents' estate. The house was glowing. Golden light spilled out of every window, casting long shadows on the snow. It looked like a Thomas Kincaid painting. If Thomas Kincaid painted scenes of grand larceny, I parked my beat-up sedan next to my father's SUV. I took a moment to breathe. The air in the car was cold, But inside me, it was absolute zero. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror. I looked tired. I looked like a girl who worked 60 hours a week and ate beans. Perfect. Let them see what they created. I walked inside. The heat hit me first, a wave of expensive, central air warmth, scented with cinnamon and pine. It smelled like money. My mother was in the kitchen, wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my couch. She was laughing, holding a glass of wine that I knew was a vintage Cabernet. "Josie," she cried, coming over to give me a hug. It was a performative hug, light, airy, careful not to wrinkle her clothes. "You made it. We were worried you'd be stuck at work." "I wouldn't miss it," I said. I scanned the room. Summer was on the sofa, surrounded by ring lights. She was filming a TikTok. "Hey guys, Merry Christmas Eve. Just waiting for Santa." Or whatever. She winked at the camera. She looked up at me and didn't even put the phone down. "Oh. Hey Joe. You look tired. You should really try that eye cream I linked in my bio." "Thanks, Summer," I said. "I look into it." "So," my father boomed, walking in from the study. A looked healthy, robust, not like a man on the brink of ruin. "How's the logistics world? Still moving boxes?" "Still moving boxes, Dad," I said. "It pays the bills." "Barely. I bet." Summer laughed. "I made $300 on a brand deal yesterday. Passive income. Josie, you should try it." $300. I had sent them $4,200 that month alone because of a medical emergency my dad claimed he had. "I'm proud of you, Summer," I said, and I meant it. I was proud of her audacity. It was truly breathtaking. We sat down to dinner. Roast beef, truffle mashed potatoes, wine that flowed like water. They talked about their upcoming trip to Cabo. "Just a little getaway," Mom said, "to recharge. The stress of the business has been overwhelming." I gripped my fork. "Is the business doing okay?" I asked. "I know you were worried about the loan." Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, we're managing. It's tight, but we survive. Thanks to you. Of course. Your little contributions help keep the lights on." "Little contributions." I smiled. I took a sip of wine. I let them talk. I let them brag. I let them dig the hole deeper and deeper until they couldn't see the sky. After dinner, we moved to the living room. The tree was magnificent, 12 feet tall, dripping with crystal ornaments. There were piles of gifts, dozens of them, shiny, expensive boxes. I put my gift under the tree. I said softly. I walked over to the corner. I was holding a single box. It was wrapped in plain brown paper. Heavy. Dense. I placed it right in the front, next to a box from Tiffany's addressed to Summer. "One gift," Summer asked, raising an eyebrow. "Times must be tough at the warehouse." "It's a group gift," I said. "For everyone. I think it's exactly what you need." My mother smiled. That tight, pitying smile she reserved just for me. "That's sweet, Josie. It's the thought that counts." "Yes," I said, staring at the box where the eviction notice lay waiting like a coiled snake. "It really is." "Open it," I said. My father tore the paper. He was expecting scotch, maybe cigars. He lifted the lid and frowned. He pulled out the stack of documents, thick and heavy, bound with a red rubber band. "What is this?" he asked, squinting at the cover page. "Notice to quit. It's an eviction notice." "Dad," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the holiday jazz playing in the background. "And behind that is the foreclosure filing. And behind that is the deed transfer." The room went silent. Even Summer stopped scrolling on her phone. "I don't understand," my mother said, her laugh nervous, brittle. "Is this a joke? Who is evicting us?" "I am," I said. My father's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. You don't own this house," Actually, I do. Or rather, I own the debt you stopped paying 6 months ago while you were saving up for that Mercedes in the garage. I bought the note from the bank last week. You didn't pay them. So now you owe me. And since you're in default, I took a sip of my wine. I'm calling the loan. You can't do that. Summer shrieked. You can't kick us out. It's Christmas. You have 30 days. I said, standing up and smoothing down my skirt. That's the legal requirement. I'd start packing the ornaments first. They're fragile. My mother lunged forward, grabbing my arm. Josie, please. We're family. We're your parents. You can't let us be homeless. I looked at her hand on my arm, the same hand that had slapped a clearance sticker on my self-worth an hour ago. You aren't homeless, I said. You have a Mercedes. You can sleep in that. It has heated seats. Right. I didn't wait for the explosion. I turned and walked to the door. Behind me, the screaming started. My father was roaring threats. Summer was wailing about her life being ruined. My mother was sobbing. I walked out into the snow. The cold air hit my face, and it felt like baptism. I got into my car and started the engine. As I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw the front door open. My father stumbled out, shouting into the wind, shaking his fist like a caricature of a tyrant. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't flip him off. I didn't scream back. I just put the car in drive and pulled away. This is the power of the silent exit. We are taught that revenge needs to be loud. We think we need to have the last word, to make them understand, to force an apology out of their throats. But that's a trap. Arguing with people who used you only gives them more of your energy. It validates them. It tells them they still matter enough to upset you. True power isn't winning the argument. True power is removing your presence from the table completely. It's realizing that your absence is the loudest thing you can offer. I didn't need them to understand why I did it. The eviction notice spoke for me. My silence was the final judgment. I wasn't running away. I was ascending. The snow melted. The gray slush of Chicago winter gave way to green. I sat on the back porch of my new house. It wasn't a mansion. It was a 3-bedroom bungalow with a paid-off mortgage and windows that didn't rattle in the wind. I had a garden now. I was growing tomatoes. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from Zillow. The estate had sold. My parents tried to sue me. Of course. They hired a cheap lawyer who told them they had a case. They didn't. The foreclosure was textbook. I had dotted every I and crossed every T. They lost the lawsuit, and the legal fees ate up whatever cash they had left. They're living in a 2-bedroom rental near the airport now. My mother works part-time as a receptionist. My father greets people at a hardware store that he doesn't own. And Summer, the Mercedes, was repossessed 3 months after Christmas. She works at a makeup counter at the mall. She blocked me on Instagram, but I heard she tells everyone her sister stole her inheritance. I took a sip of coffee. It was hot, strong, and expensive. I opened my banking app. The proceeds from the sale of the estate had just hit my account. After paying off the lien and the legal fees, there was a surplus. I transferred it to a new savings account. I named it the Glass Child Fund. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind in the trees. It was quiet. No demands. No guilt. No one asking me to carry a load that wasn't mine. I wasn't just debt-free. I was free. If you've ever had to walk away to save yourself, hit that subscribe button. Share this story with the strong ones in your life who need to hear that it's okay to put down the load. You are not a utility. You are the prize.